Welcome to Supply Chain Horizons, a video podcast series that looks at crucial issues facing global supply chain teams. This video podcast is sponsored by Logility, a leading provider of supply chain solutions used by more than 1,250 companies in more than 70 countries around the world. My name is Chris Russell, an executive with Logility, and I would like to share with you some interesting conversations that I've had with a variety of supply chain experts. Today, we're going to talk about building a business case for supply chain optimization with my friend and colleague, Scott Abbate. And Scott is the right guy for this because he's been helping supply chain professionals develop business cases for many years. This is a great topic. This really cuts to the point of everything we do or try to do in business, which is we're trying to save money, make more money. We've been out there trying to help people assess the opportunities and the values involved in the various projects that we've been involved with. So I want to talk through just some of the pros and cons of what a successful business case looks like. So, Scott Abbate, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me to do this, Chris. As I put myself in the shoes of people that are doing software evaluations, it's easy to understand how the evaluation gets deeply into technology and features and functions and capabilities, solution design, and those are all important elements. But it's also important to make sure that the business case doesn't get lost in the shuffle, and all for the purpose of being able to make a great statement of what the value to the business is, what the dollar value of the business case is, and that in turn helps justify the solution.
What's the role of the person who's typically doing this?
Well, the same people that are leading the evaluation are typically responsible, as they should be, for leading the construction of the business case. Typically, a director, vice president of supply chain, one or both of those folks. And I think this is a great idea. They sometimes enlist help from the CFO or from somebody that reports to the CFO, even if that particular individual has not been heavily involved in the evaluation.
You know, you've done something really important there. As supply chain folks, we tend to speak in supply chain language. And what the business case allows you to do, if you do it right, is to build that bridge to the financial people and to the operations side people. So it's the translation vehicle between what we're trying to do in supply chain and why we want to do it financially and operations-wise.
Yeah, oftentimes there's synergy. You know, finance starts to throw out some ideas about the value of the system to the enterprise that maybe the supply chain folks hadn't even thought about. And I think it's a good experience for the supply chain personnel to have that interaction with finance.
What does a business case end up looking like?
Yeah, companies use business cases routinely to evaluate any capital investment, whether it's equipment, plant, physical stuff, or whether it's a software solution. Some common elements are an opportunity statement, probably self-explanatory, describing the scope of the project. You know, a page or two about the scope of the project is mandatory. The third element would be the options that were considered. So we looked at 2 or 3 other solutions, and then the proposed solution, and then the senior management team, no surprise, needs to be comfortable that an appropriate level of energy and effort was put into the evaluation. And then we get into the benefit streams that we're going to rest this case on, and then what are the time and the cost estimates to implement the solution. And then we have the actual return on investment. So the final thing that we do is compare the costs to the benefits and come up with things like a break-even month. What month do we break even? What's the net present value? And maybe what's the internal rate of return? Measurements that can be compared to any other types of investments that the company might be considering.
Right, and then that allows them to sort it along with all their other operational priorities and make a decision. Okay, so what do you see as the elements of a successful business case? Because, some are more successful than others.
Yeah, so the more specific that a business case is, the more likely it is to be successful, and the less likely that it'll be, returned for refinement. Because what I do see is when a business case isn't as specific as senior management would like, or when it isn't explained to the satisfaction of senior management, they just give you more homework. They send you back to do a little more research. So why not get it right the first time? And the elements need to be stated in terms of individual benefits, and more than just one or two. The more benefits that can be identified and dollarized, the better. And then it's the dollarization that I just mentioned, taking each benefit and assigning an annual recurring dollar benefit to it. And that way, all the benefits can be summed up together in a common denominator, in a common language, the value, the annual recurring dollar value. And then even putting it together into something that might look a little bit like a P&L statement, like a before and after P&L statement, very helpful. So those are some of the elements that I think that are needed.
You know, when I've worked through these before with people, I think one of the big values is it causes the selection committee or the team to really have to think hard about it and therefore internalize it so that then they become confident and can defend it when they have to take it up the ladder.
You're doing so much work to evaluate software and to come to a good conclusion. Let's go the final mile and have a business case that ensures that, we hit a home run.
Some folks we work with, since we are the vendor, they'll say, well, we're not going to work with you on a business case. That's sort of like letting the fox into the hen house.
So number one, we have a tool, a methodology, a template, whatever you wish to call it, to put together a winning business case. I think there are many reasons to include a tool that's proven hundreds of times over to be a great way to document all the information about benefits and costs in one place. And then secondly, it's very important in this business case construction to understand that the cost element needs to be documented just as carefully as the payback element, and the two need to be compared. So the vendor is the perfect source to go to because they have all that cost information at hand, and it just makes it easier to compare the cost and the benefits together.
Yeah, and since we've been through it with like companies a bunch of times, we can give you examples of how other people have seen it, sort of averages and like companies.
Yeah, we can do a reality check of does each benefit that we're describing here and dollarizing, does it fit into the expected range? Or is it too high or too low? And if so, why? So that we can maybe reassess and readjust or at least explain why something would be outside of the normal tolerance. We've seen hundreds of these, and the person who's putting it together might have only done a few others in their careers. It could be very helpful.
All right, Scott. I think we have enough material here for several more podcasts on this topic, but here are my takeaways from this discussion. First, I think it's important to put quality thought and effort into your business case. You must make it thorough enough to be credible to top management. And be sure to consider your case from the financial point of view as well. It's quite powerful to get your financial stakeholders and CFO on board. Second, it will make a huge difference in creating your business case if you have access to some tools, to some proven ROI tools that will calculate the costs and benefits and present them in a compelling way so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And last but not least, you should be able to tap into the knowledge base of someone who's done it before, who has built lots and lots of successful business cases for companies similar to yours. There's no substitute for experience when it comes to creating the perfect justification for your proposal. I'd like to thank Scott for that compelling discussion of the do's and don'ts of building a supply chain business case. Supply Chain Horizons is sponsored by Logility. We also invite you to connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Supply Chain Horizons.